This is Paddy Galloway, who
can make any channel on YouTube go viral.
Who was even hired by Mr. Beast to help create his content. And he has directly shared all of his strategies and tactics that generated billions of views. So I watched every single interview on YouTube, over 19 of them, totaling more than 20 hours, and pulled out the most valuable advice out of all of them, breaking them down into 6 categories that took me over 80 hours to complete. Starting with the algorithm. Everybody says they understand the algorithm and that it follows the audience. But what we do with this information? Sure, we know it, but what does it mean and how do we apply this to our content?
There, which is a reminder that like the algorithm is driven by people's behavior.
Yeah, and that's lost on people. Like I still feel you can say that phrase. I think so many things are true in life. You know, there's this thing where you can say a cliche and people are like, yeah, I know that, but their actions don't map it. You know, they don't really know that. So when you say, you know, the YouTube algorithm follows the audience, so make videos for humans, people are like, yeah, but it's almost like a platitude. It's like, oh yeah, sure, I get that. But like, then they'll ask you a question. They'll be like, my CTR or my AVD, and I don't understand why this video didn't work. And I'm like, well, let's look for the audience explanation. Was this an interesting topic that your viewers typically watch? No. Did we do a good job with the packaging? I think we could improve it. Did we do a good job with the intro? I thought it was boring. All these things can affect audience behavior, can make people watch for less, can make people choose the video less when they see it in their feed. That's a better explanation than some shift in the algorithm. So it's one of those things where like, I really, really try to hammer that home. People can hear that sentence. They can hear the algorithm follows the audience, but they don't really internalize it.
In a way, it's a revolutionary concept. You're saying rather than try to game the algorithm, focus on, are you making good content?
Exactly.
There you have it. Just knowing how the algorithm works isn't enough. To actually win, your content has to do 3 things really well. Is the topic actually interesting to your audience? Is the packaging strong enough to make them click? And is the intro engaging enough to hook them? So the first step is, how do you really come up with ideas that appeal to the audience? Ideation makes sure that you maximize a video viral potential before even a single second is filmed, making sure you don't waste massive amount of time on an idea that has low view count. And here is how we do it.
What are the traits of a viral video within a niche? The first thing on that list of traits that I look at is what I call CCN, core, casual, new. I'm looking for videos that hit our core. So if we think about like our niche, like within our niche, there's like the really core viewers who like really care about the thing. The second C stands for casual, so core casual. So are we hitting the more casual viewers that kind of dip in and dip out of this niche and like care a little bit about it, but they're maybe not as like hardcore viewers? And are we hitting the new viewers? So those are viewers that maybe aren't into the niche, they haven't watched our channel before, but they're people that just, if they see something interesting, they might click the video. So just like how, let's just say we talk about permaculture, horticulture, maybe I don't care about that, maybe I'm not into it, but if I see that video about how the UN is holding back the Sahara Desert, it's packaged in a way that can attract me as a new viewer. It probably also attracts the core viewers who really care about that topic too. And it attracts the casuals who kind of dip in and dip out. The best way to look at your niche and expand your niche is look at every idea and say, can a core, casual, and new viewer all click this video and enjoy it? And I think that's where so many people go wrong. They get too caught up in just the core. They get too caught up in just like appeasing like the hardcore horticulture, you know, students and viewers who want to see these really technical things, and they forget about the casual and the new viewer. And then on the flip side, some people get too caught up in the new viewer and they just forget to like also appeal to that core, and they go too broad and they kind of miss the mark with the audience that they have been building. So I really, really like to think of that. Like that framework, it sounds simple, and I think I've mentioned it in tweets and things before, but I cannot mention it enough because that just changes how you approach YouTube. You look at every niche as, like you said, a kind of expanding niche and not like a limiting niche.
So if I'm reading between the lines here a little bit, it sounds like what you're saying is if I'm trying to grow my channel, that means that I'm by definition trying to attract new viewers. And the best way to attract new viewers is to make a video that has broader appeal so that it has a better chance of getting a click when it's in a recommended area to a stranger.
Exactly. Like broadening the appeal of your niche is so crucial. And I think there's this thing, you know, curse of knowledge bias, where when we know something, we assume everyone else knows it. And what that means is sometimes as you know, creators in niches, we can end up always trying to go like really specific and narrow to try to like show viewers new things. But sometimes we just forget that like, oh, actually the more simple things, the more simple ways of framing things, like that might seem obvious to us, but maybe that expands the reach of the video. Maybe it makes it more interesting to, you know, a broader group of people. So yeah, I'm always looking at it and saying like, how can we just make sure that we're not just limiting it to the hardcore viewers? And often if you're hardcore enough of a niche, of a fan of a niche to make a YouTube channel around it, you're going to want to go really niche and specific. But that's in itself a trap, because then you end up just appealing to other people that are just as hardcore about the niche as you are. And that's probably a very small percentage of viewers.
After knowing CCN FIT, you know you will have ideas that will generate millions of views. Next and most important step is to filter ideas. But before I show you how Paddy Galloway filter his ideas, here is why you should focus on validating ideas.
To realize that as a creator, you're not limited to what is happening in your niche. So often, like I look at, how do you ideate? With, let's say, a channel that does just like one focus area. Let's say it's golf. They're like, how do I ideate? And it's like, oh, like currently I go look at all the other golf channels and see what's working. And it's like, well, are there any other niches that have like a certain level of adjacency to golf? Like, is there other niches where you could take formats from that? And like even our format here of like, maybe it's a $1 versus $10 versus $100 golf club or something. Like you can apply formats in so many niches. And it's honestly, it sounds simple, but so much of our success through my consulting company, through the other things we do, it's just seeing what is working in all these different niches, and what are in our niche that we're currently focused on. What is a format that other people are not doing yet that we could bring over and adapt? And also, I think there's always like this feeling of like, well, we want to be original, we want to try something new. But there's a big difference between taking a format in your existing niche and doing it yourself, because then that competing channel might be like, hey, I did that first, or one of your audience members is like, that's not original. If you take, like, if you're the astrophotography channel, you take that over, it feels fresh, it feels new. And maybe in other niches that's now saturated and it's not as interesting. So it's so interesting how you can kind of take things over from different niches.
There's this method that we talk about quite a bit called Be a Magician. And it's because one time we had a conversation with a magician who said to us, I don't have to come up with new tricks. I just have to show my tricks to audiences who haven't seen them before.
There we go.
And it like kind of blew me away, because I was like, that's true. Like the space audience may have never seen that format before.
And the next steps are exactly how he finds and validates ideas that generate viral videos.
When I have an idea and I'm thinking, okay, I want this to hit my core casual new, I feel pretty good about that. What are the next steps from there for how I prioritize certain video ideas that I have?
Making sure, like, I always think about this idea of the idea funnel. So you have this big funnel that you put ideas into, and the end result is your funnel spits out different ideas that you can then like prioritize based on what you're feeling most excited about. So like, how do we put things into the funnel? I always like to say there's three main sources of ideas. Internal ideas, so things that have worked for us in the past. So looking internally, like what has worked on our channel? Can we come up with more ideas like that? External ideas, things that have worked for our competitors or even just other channels across YouTube. How can we come up with ideas based on things that have worked for them? And then innovation, so just sort of more blue ocean, like looking, across YouTube, across different industries, and saying like, what's something innovative and new that I can come up with? So if you're contributing lots of ideas into the funnel from those different sources, you then pass through to the kind of the filter part, which is your main question here, is like, how do we actually eliminate them down? And I think, asking yourself, does it have that core casual new viewer fit? It's a great question. Asking, is it feasible to make happen? So like if you went and did brainstorming, and this is kind of funny when I work with like new strategists, because I hire strategists for my business, and I also like interview and talk to a lot of like up and coming people. And first of all, I'll say like people are really good. Like some of these young kids are such good strategists and I think about YouTube really deeply. But the one thing they sometimes don't understand is like limitations and feasibility. So they'll be like, let's say we're brainstorming ideas for like a wildlife channel, and we could say, let's come up with an idea which is like, I swam covered in blood with like 10 great white sharks. It's like, yeah, that would go viral, but it also might kill the creator. So like, we got to be careful. So like thinking about the feasibility of ideas is super important. So is this feasible? Can we make it happen? Another one I get is like people come up with these ideas, but it's like, if you brainstorm for your podcast and said like, how do we get to 1 million views? Well, if you had Mr. Beast on for an episode, it'd probably get to 1 million views, but that's also quite difficult because you need to, get a contact with Jimmy. You need to like convince him that it's a good idea. You probably need to grow this podcast more before he'd want to do it. So like there's all these like things that get in the way. So like having that feasibility and using that as a score as well is important. So like, does it have CCN fit? Is it feasible? The title thumbnail as well. Like, can we actually come up with title thumbnail? Like, not only can we say, yeah, we can come up with it, can we actually come up with one before we even go further with this? Like, can we come up with the title, we call it, and like a rough sketch of the thumbnail? That can like eliminate. So if you have 100 ideas in the funnel, maybe the CCN fit, you eliminate like 40 of them because so many videos don't have that. Feasibility, you eliminate like 20 of them. So you've got like 40 left, right? Then you say, can I come up with title thumbnails for them? Before you know it, out of those 40 you have left, now you're looking at it and saying, well, only half of these I can actually think of what I would title thumbnail them. So then you got 20 left. And then some other questions you could ask, like, am I actually genuinely, as a creator, excited and want to make this video? Because some people are surprised when I say that because I am, like I mentioned earlier, like a views maximizer, someone that just wants to get more views. But if I think about, if our goal is to get more views, it's not going to really work really well if I keep making the creator make these ideas they don't like doing, because at some point they're just going to want to not do that anymore. They're going to get burnt out. So long term, that's going to hurt us. So it's still important that the creator like feels passionate and excited about them. So even for you yourself as a creator, just looking at it and saying, am I excited to interview this person? Am I excited to do this thing? Like, does this like make me want to make the content? Maybe then you've got 20 ideas left and that limits it down to 10. Then when it comes to the 10, I always like to do this thing which I call the one-page idea development. So on a one-pager, I like to have just a rough thumbnail sketch. I like to have a rough title. So you have a thumbnail sketch, rough title. I like to have a why square. The why square, I just like to list 1 or 2 or 3 points of like why this video is going to work. And then I like to just roughly list out like the log line of the video. So like roughly what the video is going to be about. So if I have 10 ideas left, I'm developing each one of those 10 ideas in those one pagers. Again, I can already hear people saying that's so much work. I can do 10 one-page ideas in like an hour or two, you know, especially when you think about the ideas being such a source for views and momentum across the whole channel. Like we can spare an hour or two to develop out these ideas. You know, they deserve that at least. So I've developed them out in this one pager. I have 10 ideas. Then I just like to look at it myself. I like to ask, you know, if I've got employees or if I have like other people that are in my niche or just friends, I just like to then present those ideas. So instead of getting on a call and saying, hey, I'm thinking about doing this idea where we swim with a great white shark, it's like, here's the idea, here's the logline, what do you think? Here's the idea, here's the logline, what do you think? And just going through and asking different people's opinion. Like even, you know, myself, I think I have like a good measure of what a great video is for the different clients we work with. But without that like ability to just ask others' opinion, you're just going to be isolated and you're going to, you know, focus too much on your ego and like what you think is right. So even I really like to ask just random people, like even just like, sometimes they get surprised, but like maybe there's like a random new editor on a team and I'll be like, what do you think of this idea? And they're like, oh, I don't know. I just started here. I'm like, no, but what do you think? Like, can you imagine this one being interesting? So asking lots of opinions, and then maybe you're left with 3 or 4 videos that you want to prioritize and you develop them from there. Be a very small percentage of viewers.
First, you make an idea that we enjoyed by almost everyone by using CCN FIT. Second, you validate your ideas by 3 different sources, so you know there is a proven demand for the type of content you are making. Then you judge idea feasibility, whether you can do it or not. And lastly, can it be explained by a title and thumbnail? After ticking all the boxes, you will get refined ideas that will perform. So the next step is to express that idea through the thumbnail. Most creators know they need a clickable thumbnail, but they just usually throw random images, use exaggerated facial expressions, boost the brightness, and call it clickable thumbnail. Those things can help, but they are not the real reason the thumbnail actually works. Here is how Paddy explains it.
Then in terms of thumbnails, for me, like the thumbnail is very kind of open. The whole world of best practices around thumbnails is very open to interpretation. I don't think there's a general like, this is the only way to make a thumbnail, because it does definitely depend on the audience. The first thing I would say is a thumbnail to me is at least 80, maybe 90% the psychology of the click, and then maybe 10, 20% the actual design of the thumbnail.
What does that mean?
I'll explain. So let's just take the Mark Rober example. So Mark Rober has this thumbnail where he's testing if sharks can smell blood in water. A thumbnail like that doesn't take very long to design. It's pretty easy to actually put that together. It's very natural. It's using natural colors and lighting, but it has a really interesting scenario. You see the shark behind this person with his hands out in front of the camera, and that creates like this really interesting like psychological reason to click. You're not clicking because the colors are great. You're clicking because there's a really interesting psychological angle of someone about to get attacked potentially by a shark. So if you look at the best performing thumbnails on YouTube, sure, they're well designed, but usually because they're showing something really interesting and really like a situation about to unfold, a dangerous thing about to happen, a really unbelievable object or item that no one's ever seen before, a tiny cell phone, a massive cell phone, these different things. What is actually being shown in the thumbnail is so much more important than the design. Not saying design isn't important, you know, color theory, making sure things are clean, obvious, easy to see, just like a title, like your thumbnail should be easy to actually process. I should be able to see it in just a glance. I call it the glance test. I'll often just like put a thumbnail in front of me, then I'll scroll by really quickly and just make sure that while it's in front of me, I can see everything that's happening. I can read the text. I can understand the image in just a glance of a second or two, as opposed to having to like look at it and take too long to watch it or to understand it. We all edit thumbnails on, you know, I've got a 4K monitor in front of me, big widescreen. When I'm making a thumbnail on this computer, I have all this real estate. I'm looking at it for hours. I'm tweaking things and doing things. And this is the same for anyone that makes thumbnails or designers that make thumbnails for clients as well. We're looking at it on this massive screen, whereas a YouTuber sees it just for a split second. So being able to like glance at it and understand it immediately is really important. So for me, it's really about the thing we're showing more than how we're showing it, if that makes sense.
That thumbnail example you just gave has no text on it. Your channel, all the thumbnails almost have text on it. What's the role of text in a thumbnail? What are the rules you have around that?
I don't think there's necessarily, the only hard rules I would say is in general, I would stay away from having over 5 or 6 words. So if you look at the thumbnails on my channel, generally it's like 2 or 3 words, maybe 4. It's like how he beat YouTube or the kid who broke the YouTube algorithm or whatever. So it's generally quite short. In terms of text versus no text, I have a bit of a pet peeve when I see people say, never use text. If you use text, the thumbnail's a failure, because I think for certain channels, text does add a lot. If you remove the text from my thumbnails, for example, they just end up feeling quite empty because there's no action, because my thumbnails are all commentary videos, video essays on YouTubers. You take that Mark Rober example with the shark. If he adds text in there, it just makes it busier. Like, it doesn't need to be busier. It's the actual action of the concept that is everything, and it's super easy to understand. Like, imagine he just pointed out with an arrow, shark. You know, it would just like create this like silly busyness to the image, and it wouldn't feel as natural and like raw.
Thumbnail works mainly because of the psychology of the click 80 to 90% of the time, where people are drawn to the interesting and risky or unusual situations. Design still matters, but only to ensure the idea is clearly and instantly understood at a glance. And text should be minimal, 2 to 5 words, and used only when the visual alone can't fully convey the idea. Once you got the attention through the thumbnail, then naturally the eye will focus on the title to make sense of the video. Well, majority of the effort goes to the video production or even thumbnail, but treat title as an afterthought. So you end up with the high quality videos but still no clicks, because the title isn't giving people enough reason to click.
Like for title, there's a few best practices for me. It's always keeping it really simple. People sometimes confuse simple and short. I do have a preference for short titles, but sometimes you can have a title that's a little bit longer, but if it's still really simple and easy to read, that's important, and that can still work. So I like to look at titles that are really simple, really readable. Like, think about people at all different sort of reading levels, but also all different languages, because realistically, you're going to get viewers from, you know, other countries, other places that English might not be their first language. If you go onto any big American channel that has a primarily US-based audience, let's just say they have 60% of their audience in America. Now, of course, you might add on a bit of Canada, a bit of like the UK, a bit of Australia. They could have 20 or 30% or more viewers that are potentially watching from India, from other countries, from Africa, from obviously South America has a big audience as well. So like, there's all these different viewers potentially out there. So I always kind of, when I see a title that's like using complicated words or is just deliberately like difficult to read or too vague, I always like get red flags. I want to see something that's really simple, easy, straight to the point. I like to use really punchy language in titles, generally speaking. Like, let's just take my channel as an example of it. I'm not sort of going, hey, here's why Mr. Beast is really cool. You should watch this video. It's very much like how Mr. Beast broke YouTube. And it always kind of stood to me because I had a friend that was really into journalism. And he just looked at my channel from completely on the outside as like a complete, like, you know, non-YouTube viewer. I don't think he even watched YouTube very much. And he just goes, you know what, Paddy, like, your titles are just great because they're just punchy. They're straight to the point. There's no vagueness. You're not trying to be clever with a pun. You're just saying how Mark Rober beat the algorithm, how Mr. Beast blew up his channel, or whatever it might be. The Jesser example of the channel I work with, one of our videos from last year that did really well was going to 5 NBA games in 50 hours. We didn't overcomplicate it. We didn't say, I went to 5 NBA games in 50 hours and it was really difficult, exclamation mark, exclamation mark. It's just straight to the point, very matter of fact, pragmatic language. And that's generally my preference for titles. I will say it does change a little bit based on audience and based on gender even. I actually see that female viewers sometimes do prefer a slightly different titling style towards male viewers, sometimes a bit longer, sometimes a lot of lowercase, whereas quite often the male viewers like a very like pointy in your face thing. That's a bit of a generalization, but generally I do see that as a trend. But yeah, trying to keep it relatively short. Most of the best titles I've put together in my life with clients are usually 50 characters or under, and sometimes 60 characters or under, but generally 50 characters or under, and really think about universal, easy to understand words. Then in terms of thumbnails, for me, like, the thumbnail is very kind of open. The whole world of best practices around thumbnails is very open to interpretation. I don't think there's a general, like, this is the only way to make a thumbnail, because it does definitely depend on the audience.
Good YouTube titles should be simple, clear, and easy to read. Strong titles use direct, punchy language and avoid vagueness or clever complexity, so anyone, even non-native English speakers, can understand instantly. Most effective titles are straight to the point and usually under 50 to 60 characters. Now, we have made them clip. The next important step after this point is what makes them keep watching. Majority of the people start intros with, hey guys, what's up? Or
there was one I watched where the intro reel was 50 seconds.
That make them lose over 50% of the audience in just 30 seconds. And in order to avoid that, Paddy Galloway explains how to create intro like a mastermind.
This is one of the biggest problems that creators have. Understanding how to hook someone, how to get to the point. And how to not put too much context in. I think way too many creators put way too much context in their intros. Like, I don't want to hear all this explanation. I just want to hear delivery. I just want to hear us flow into the rest of the story. And that's another thing as well. Like, it might sound obvious to you guys, but so many creators have like an intro reel, you know, like a little like
Oh, I hate that. There was one I watched where the intro reel was 50 seconds.
That sounds kind of like your
It was-
videos, Graham.
No, but
Smash the like button.
No,
Make
no,
sure
no,
you please do it. Are you gonna do it?
Jack,
Okay,
no,
thank
no.
you.
I'm talking about one of those pre-recorded where it's in front of every single video, where it's like that.
And it
like
was 50 seconds.
It was 50 seconds.
So I've studied like thousands of retention curves across, I want to say hundreds, that's maybe a bit of an exaggeration, but like dozens of niches. I've never seen an intro reel serve a purpose. Like, they're just not they're not useful. They're not needed. I honestly, like, with my videos, like my videos take me maybe like, some videos of mine take like 100 hours to finalize between scripting and like editing and everything together. And let's just say it's a 10-minute video. You would think like each minute has a 10% time allocation. The reality is I spend like 30 to 40% of the time on the first minute just to make sure every word is right. And I have that liberty because like I post infrequently. And I think it's harder when you're posting a lot of content to be able to go into that detail. That's how strongly I feel about how you start the video. So like, talk about hacks, like faster intros that get to the point and don't, like I always say, an intro that doesn't feel like an intro. Like, if I can point at your intro and just see so clearly where it ends, and it's like, okay, now let's get into the video. Why didn't you just start there? You know, that's like the biggest intro hack. So that's definitely another thing that people need to work on.
So creators lose viewers because the intro have too much contrast and not enough immediate value. Because people want delivery and not explanations. The best intro gets straight to the point and flow naturally into the content without obvious intro sections. That's why creators spend a huge portion of their effort on the first minute and make sure every word hooks attention instantly. Now the audience is hooked, they are ready to see the whole video. But how do we make sure they watch the video till the end? The answer is retention. Well, the first thing comes to mind when thinking about retention is fast editing. Everyone thinks fast editing improves retention. But what if that's not actually the case? What if instead of keeping them watching, it hurts the retention? Here is how Paddy Galloway explains it.
When I'm thinking about retention, really what it comes down to me is when people think about how do I hold retention better, their mind typically goes to things like you just listed there, which is jump cuts, speed, fast, lots of things flashing on screen, crazy pace, right? And I think there's a certain level where, like, yeah, you want to be fast. Your intro should have like a good pace to it. A younger audience might engage more with content that's a bit more crazy and fast paced. But really, it comes down to just what you're saying. Like, what is the topic of the video? What is the scripting? Like, how are you actually putting across your information? I can always tell this because when you get someone that's like a really good storyteller, they just invariably do well on YouTube if they're able to have camera presence as well. You know, so many of the best YouTubers, they're just really good storytellers. Like, look at someone like Mark Rober. I don't think Mark Rober has the fastest pace in the world. It's kind of like regular pace. His intros might be a little faster, but he slows down. His storytelling, his scripting is really good. Like, he just uses the right words. He knows how to hook your attention. And when I think about retention, the first place I start is, well, what are we actually saying? You know, what are we saying? How are we structuring intro? And it's also like, what are we not saying? Like, what information are we holding back to put across later? Big fault I see is creators trying to jam pack too much information too fast into the piece of content. Whereas I'm a big fan of just like drip feeding context. That's what I call it quite often, like drip feeding context. So we have a bit of context at the start, we spread a bit more later into the video. I think so much of it is just scripting and knowing how to write good stories. Like, whereas to me, it's like, well, what are we saying? You know, what are we actually putting across?
Here to describe the answer to solving retention is not trying to game retention, is just tell a goddamn good story.
Exactly.
Retention is driven by strong storytelling and scripting, then by editing tricks or speed. Creators can keep viewers by structuring information well, pacing it properly, and building curiosities over time. Instead of forcing attention, they should rely on creating compelling stories. There you have it. You should pat yourself on the back coming this far, because after this video, your content will perform significantly if you apply these steps, given by Paddy. It took me a lot of time to condense all the materials, so please subscribe and join my newsletter. The key thing is we must focus on making more videos, often while understanding what mistakes we are making and learning from them and implementing in every video so that we improve every single time. Thanks for watching.